25 Forgotten Money-Saving Tricks. Only poor families knew, and we forgot. Remember when families could stretch $1 until it screamed? When parents somehow made ends meet on wages that wouldn't cover today's grocery bill? The art of extreme frugality wasn't just about pinching pennies. It was survival wisdom passed down through generations. Today we're exploring 25 forgotten money-saving tricks that poor families mastered out of necessity, strategies that could save modern households thousands. Let's start with the no-spend week habit. This wasn't some trendy social media challenge back then. It was a monthly survival strategy that families relied on to make it to the next paycheck. Picture this. The third week of the month arrives and mom announces it's a no-spend week. That meant absolutely nothing gets purchased except true emergencies. No quick runs to the store for milk, no grabbing a magazine at the checkout, no just this once treats for the kids. Families would inventory everything they had, every can in the back of the cupboard, every forgotten box in the pantry, every leftover in the fridge. Meals got creative real fast. That half box of pasta became the base for a casserole using canned corn and the last of the cheese. The nearly empty peanut butter jar got scraped clean for sandwiches. Kids learned that we're out of cereal meant switching to toast or oatmeal, not a trip to the store. These weeks forced families to use what they had, clear out old food before it spoiled, and reset their spending habits. By the end of the month, they'd saved anywhere from $50 to $200 just by refusing to open their wallets. Modern families trying this report, saving an average of $800 per month when they implement regular no-spend weeks. Cash in envelopes for every bill. Long before fancy budgeting apps and spreadsheets, poor families had a foolproof system that made overspending literally impossible. On payday, they'd cash the entire check and divide it into labeled envelopes: rent, electricity, food, gas, school supplies, and if they were lucky, a tiny one marked fun. Each envelope held the exact amount needed for that expense, down to the penny. When the food envelope ran low, meals got simpler. When the gas envelope emptied, walking became the only option. There was no swiping a card and worrying about it later. No overdraft fees, no credit card interest. The physical act of watching cash disappear made every purchase feel real in a way that plastic never could. Grocery shopping meant taking only the food envelope, leaving temptation at home. Kids grew up understanding that when mom said, "We don't have money for that," she meant it literally. They could see the empty envelope. This system forced families to live within their means because there was simply no other option. Studies show that people using cash spend 12–18% less than those using cards, but for these families, it meant the difference between making rent and facing eviction. Cooking stretch meals from scraps. Nothing, and I mean absolutely nothing, went to waste in a poor household kitchen. That ham bone from Sunday's dinner? It became the foundation for a pot of bean soup that fed the family for 3 more days. Chicken bones were boiled into rich stock, vegetable peelings went into a constantly simmering stock pot, and even potato skins got crisped up as a snack. Families kept a soup pot in the freezer where every leftover bit went. The last spoonful of vegetables, meat trimmings, that single leftover meatball, half an onion. By week's end, that frozen collection became a hearty soup that tasted different every time, but always filled bellies. Stale bread transformed into bread pudding, French toast, or breadcrumbs for meatloaf stretcher. The grease from cooking bacon was saved in a coffee can, becoming the cooking fat for everything else. Even coffee grounds got a second brewing, making weak coffee that was better than none at all. These stretch meals could make a week's groceries last 10 days, saving families $200–300 monthly. Restaurant chefs now call this root-to-stem cooking and charge premium prices for what poor families did out of necessity, turning yesterday's leftovers into tomorrow's meal. The transformation of leftovers was an art form that would put today's meal prep influencers to shame. Monday's roast chicken became Tuesday's chicken salad, Wednesday's soup, and Thursday's fried rice. That leftover rice wasn't just reheated, it became rice pudding for dessert, fried rice for dinner, or rice cakes for breakfast. Mashed potatoes transformed into potato pancakes, shepherd's pie topping, or potato soup. Even the smallest portions had designated futures. 2 tablespoons of corn became part of tomorrow's salad, a single sausage got sliced into pasta sauce, and that last piece of pie filling became a parfait. Families had leftover night, where everything came out and people made their own combinations, what restaurants now call bowls and charge $15 for. Nothing spent more than 2 days in the fridge unchanged. This constant transformation meant food boredom never set in, despite eating the same base ingredients all week. The key was seasoning and presentation, adding different spices, serving in different ways, making it feel new even when it wasn't. Modern families throw away 30–40% of their food, but these households wasted less than 5%, saving roughly $1,500 annually just by reimagining leftovers. Growing even a tiny garden. You didn't need a backyard farm to cut grocery costs. Poor families grew food anywhere they could find 6 inches of dirt and 4 hours of sunlight. Fire escapes sprouted tomato plants in coffee cans, windowsills held herb gardens in old margarine tubs, and even the narrowest side yard became a vegetable patch. One tomato plant could produce 15–20 pounds of fruit, saving $50–60 over a summer. Lettuce grew in window boxes, providing salad greens for months from a 50-cent seed packet. Families chose high-yield, expensive-to-buy vegetables. Herbs that cost $3 a bunch grew endlessly from one plant, cherry tomatoes that produced until frost, and climbing beans that yielded pounds from a single vine. Even apartment dwellers participated, growing sprouts in jars on the counter, mushrooms in closets, and potatoes in buckets on balconies. Seeds were saved from year to year, shared between neighbors, started in egg cartons and yogurt cups. The garden wasn't just about food, it was about control, dignity, and teaching kids where food really came from. During peak season, a small garden could cut grocery bills by $50–100 weekly. What modern homesteaders treat as a trendy hobby was survival for families living paycheck to paycheck, canning and freezing seasonal bargains. When corn hit 10 cents an ear in August, poor families bought bushels, not dozens. They understood that preserving peak season produce was like banking money for winter. Entire weekends were dedicated to canning marathons. Kitchens became steam-filled production lines with every pot boiling, every surface covered in jars. Tomatoes bought for pennies per pound in September became the pasta sauce, soup base, and stewed tomatoes that lasted until the following summer. Green beans, pickles, peaches, applesauce, rows of jars lined basement shelves like edible savings accounts. When freezers became affordable, the preservation game expanded. Families would pool money to buy a quarter cow, dividing and freezing enough meat for months. Berries picked for free or bought cheap at U-Pick farms filled freezer bags for winter desserts and breakfast. Even bread was bought on sale and frozen. Some families had 3 or 4 loaves stashed away. The math was simple. Tomatoes that cost $3 per pound in January could be preserved for 30 cents per pound in August. A family spending one weekend canning could save $500–1,000 over the winter months. This wasn't just frugality, it was food security, ensuring that no matter how tight money got in February, there would still be vegetables on the table, buying basic staples in bulk. Poor families understood a truth that warehouse stores now profit from. Buying big meant massive savings if you could scrape together the upfront cost. They'd save for months to buy a 50-pound bag of flour for $15 instead of paying $3 for 5 pounds at a time. Rice came in 20-pound bags hidden in closets. oatmeal in giant canisters that lasted months, and dried beans in quantities that seemed excessive to outsiders. Families formed buying clubs, pooling money to purchase wholesale quantities, then dividing them up. A 100-pound bag of potatoes split 4 ways meant each family paid restaurant wholesale prices. Sugar, salt, and oil were bought in commercial sizes, transferred to smaller containers for daily use. Storage became creative. Bags of rice under beds, flour in giant pickle jars, beans in cleaned-out coffee cans stacked in cupboards. Buying bulk meant never running out of basics, never making emergency store runs, never paying convenience store prices. The upfront investment might be $100, but it replaced $300 worth of small purchases over 3 months. Even spices were bought in bulk from ethnic markets, costing dollars instead of the small fortune charged for those tiny grocery store jars. This bulk buying habit could cut staple food costs by 60–70%, freeing up money for fresh produce and protein. Reusing jars and containers endlessly. In poor households, empty containers were valuable resources, not trash. Every jar, tin, and tub had 3 or 4 lives before even considering the garbage. Pickle jars became drinking glasses, fancy ones with measurements on the side. Baby food jars held spices, screws, buttons, and bobby pins. Coffee cans transformed into planters, cookie containers, and lunch boxes. Margarine tubs were Tupperware before anyone could afford the real thing, holding leftovers, organizing drawers, and packing lunches. Cool Whip containers had their own hierarchy. The good ones with tight lids for sending food to sick neighbors, the older ones for storing rice and beans. Cereal boxes became magazine holders, drawer dividers, and kids' craft supplies. Even bread bags were washed and reused for everything from covering rising dough to picking up after dogs. This wasn't environmental consciousness, it was economic necessity. Why buy storage containers when perfectly good ones came free with food? Families could save $100–200 yearly just by never buying organizational products. The habit ran so deep that even after circumstances improved, many couldn't throw away a good jar. Visit any grandmother who lived through poverty, and you'll find cupboards full of carefully washed containers waiting for their next purpose: sewing, patching, and darning clothes. Every poor household had a sewing basket that was as essential as the kitchen stove. Clothes weren't replaced when they ripped. They were repaired, reinforced, and kept in service for years. Kids learned young that a torn knee meant sitting still while mom stitched it up, often with decorative patches that made damage look intentional. Socks were darned using a wooden egg or light bulb, weaving new fabric across holes until the sock had more repairs than original material. Hems were let down and taken up as children grew, following the faint lines of previous alterations. Buttons were cut off worn-out clothes and saved in tins. Zippers were carefully removed and reused, and even elastic was salvaged. Patches weren't hidden. They became decorative elements, with mothers turning rips into flowers, cars, or animals on kids' clothes. Elbow patches on jackets, knee patches on pants, and reinforced pockets were signs of thrift, not poverty. A shirt might last 5 years instead of 1. Pants could survive 3 kids instead of barely making it through 1. The average family saved $500–1,000 annually just by extending clothing life through repairs. These skills meant that wearing it out truly meant wearing it completely out, not just getting bored with it. Hand-me-downs and clothing swaps. Before thrift stores were trendy, poor families had an elaborate system of clothing circulation that kept everyone dressed without spending money. Clothes moved through families like heirlooms, from oldest to youngest, cousin to cousin, neighbor to neighbor. That winter coat might dress 6 kids over 8 years, gaining patches and character with each owner. Families with children staggered in age would swap entire wardrobes. The size 8 clothes went to the Johnsons, while the size 10s came back from the Smiths. Church basements hosted clothing swaps, where families brought what they'd outgrown and took what they needed, no money changing hands. Mothers kept detailed mental inventories of whose kids were what sizes, automatically setting aside outgrown items for specific families. Even adult clothes circulated. Maternity wear made rounds through the neighborhood. Work clothes were passed to those starting new jobs, and special occasion outfits were borrowed rather than bought. This system meant that buying new clothes was reserved for underwear and shoes, and sometimes not even those. A family could dress 4 kids for under $100 a year, when retail would have cost $1,000 or more. The clothes might not match perfectly, but they were clean, mended, and worn with the dignity of making do, line-drying laundry instead of using dryers. The clothesline was a poor family's dryer, and it worked in all but the worst weather. Lines stretched across backyards, between buildings, through basements, and over radiators. Monday was wash day, and by dawn, sheets were flapping like flags of frugality. Families developed elaborate systems, heavy items on the strongest lines, delicates on the porch where they wouldn't blow away, and a strict order of hanging to maximize space and sun exposure. Winter meant clothes freeze-dried stiff as boards, brought in to finish over heating vents. Apartment dwellers strung lines across rooms, turning living spaces into obstacle courses of drying laundry. The wooden clothespins were guarded treasures, stored in bags made from old pantyhose hung right on the line. Besides saving the cost of a dryer and the electricity to run it, about $20-30 monthly, line drying made clothes last longer without the heat damage of tumbling. Whites stayed whiter from sun bleaching, and everything smelled like fresh air instead of artificial fragrance. Kids helped by handing up clothes, learning to hang shirts by the tail and pants, by the cuffs, to avoid clothespin marks. The weekly ritual saved families $300-400 annually while providing gentle exercise and a chance to wave at neighbors doing the same thing, turning old clothes into new items. Textile transformation was a survival skill that would impress today's upcycling influencers. Worn-out adult shirts became children's dresses with just a few strategic cuts and seams. Dad's old work pants transformed into sturdy tote bags, aprons, or patches for other pants. Sweaters with holes became mittens, scarves, and hat and mitten sets for the whole family. The best parts of several worn garments combined into one good piece, the back of one shirt with the front of another. Good sleeves moved to a different body. T-shirts past wearing became the ultimate all-purpose material: cleaning rags, quilt squares, braided rugs, and hair ties. Old jeans transformed into everything from pot holders to purses, their tough fabric perfect for items needing durability. Even underwear had an afterlife as dust rags and silver polishing cloths. Families kept a rag bag where cotton clothes went to await transformation, and nothing entered the trash if any usable fabric remained. This constant repurposing meant buying fewer household items. Why purchase dust cloths when old T-shirts work better? A creative mother could save $200-300 yearly just by transforming old clothes instead of buying new household textiles and children's clothes, making all-purpose cleaners at home. The space under a poor family's sink held 3 things: vinegar, baking soda, and a bar of soap. The holy trinity of household cleaning. These 3 ingredients, costing less than $5 total, replaced dozens of specialized cleaners. Vinegar cut through grease, removed mineral deposits, and disinfected surfaces. Baking soda scrubbed, deodorized, and lifted stains. Soap, grated and dissolved in hot water, became everything from laundry detergent to floor cleaner. Windows sparkled with vinegar and newspaper, another reuse. Toilets came clean with baking soda and elbow grease, and floors shone with vinegar in the mop water. The recipes passed between neighbors like prized secrets: 2 parts water to 1 part vinegar for windows, baking soda paste for scrubbing tubs, soap flakes, and washing soda for laundry. Fancy problems got simple solutions. Hydrogen peroxide for bloodstains, salt for red wine, cornstarch for grease. Even air freshener was homemade, simmering cinnamon sticks and orange peels, or leaving open boxes of baking soda in musty areas. This DIY approach saved $30–50 monthly on cleaning supplies while avoiding the harsh chemicals that triggered kids' asthma. The same bottle of vinegar that cost $2 cleaned more surfaces than $30 worth of specialized products, using the library as free entertainment. The public library was Disney World for poor families. Free entertainment, education, and escape all under one roof. Kids got one library card as soon as they could write their name, and it became their ticket to infinite adventures. Families made weekly pilgrimages, each member allowed to check out the maximum number of items. Books weren't just read once, but repeatedly, until due dates forced their return. The library's magazine section meant never buying subscriptions. Families read month-old issues of everything from Popular Mechanics to Good Housekeeping. When VHS and later DVD sections opened, Friday night movies came from library shelves instead of rental stores. Libraries offered free programs, story time for toddlers, summer reading contests with prizes, craft workshops, and homework help. The reference section substituted for encyclopedia sets no one could afford, and librarians became trusted advisors on everything from job hunting to cooking. Newspapers were read there daily by those who couldn't afford subscriptions, and the library's warmth or air conditioning provided relief from uncomfortable homes. A family using the library actively saved $100–200 monthly on entertainment, education, and climate control. That library card, free to obtain and priceless in value, was often the only membership poor families could afford, bartering skills instead of paying cash. In poor neighborhoods, skills were currency, and everyone knew what everyone else could do. The mechanic fixed cars in exchange for haircuts from the beautician. The seamstress altered clothes for vegetables from the gardener. Babysitting was traded hour for hour, creating elaborate childcare networks that never involved cash. Men gathered for barn-raising style events, everyone helping re-roof Johnson's house, knowing Johnson would help with their plumbing. Women exchanged preserving skills for baked goods, knitting lessons for house cleaning help. Even kids participated, mowing lawns in exchange for bike repairs, helping with groceries for piano lessons. This barter economy meant that services costing hundreds of dollars in the cash economy happened through mutual aid. Need your transmission fixed? That might be worth painting someone's living room. Want your daughter to learn piano? Offer to do the teacher's tax returns. The informal nature meant no taxes, no paperwork, just neighbors helping neighbors with handshake agreements. Families could receive $2,000 to $3,000 worth of services annually without spending a dime, just by contributing their own skills to the community pool. This system built tight communities where everyone was both needed and provided for, walking and carpooling whenever possible. Cars were luxuries that poor families either didn't have or couldn't afford to use casually. Every trip was planned, combined, and shared. Getting to work meant elaborate carpools where 4 people split gas costs, each driving 1 week a month if they had cars, or all chipping in for gas if only one person had a vehicle. Grocery shopping happened in groups, with neighbors sharing rides and helping carry bags. Kids walked to school in packs, regardless of weather, with older ones responsible for younger ones. Bicycles were serious transportation, not toys, maintained carefully, and equipped with baskets for hauling groceries. Families knew every bus route and schedule, planning their days around public transportation timetables. Walking wasn't exercise. It was how you got places when the gas tank was empty and payday was 3 days away. Church rides were coordinated, with those who had cars making multiple trips to gather those without. Doctor appointments were scheduled for the same day, to justify the gas expense. The combination of walking, biking, and carpooling saved families $200–400 monthly in gas, maintenance, and parking. Those forced car-free periods taught that most essential trips weren't essential at all. You could walk a mile to the store, kids could walk to school, and combining errands meant one trip replaced 5. Cooking from scratch instead of buying convenience foods. In poor kitchens, convenience foods were science fiction. Everything was made from basic ingredients because a 5-pound bag of flour costing $2 could make 20 loaves of bread, while one store loaf cost that same $2. Bread was baked twice weekly, filling homes with yeasty warmth and providing sandwich loaves, dinner rolls, and pizza dough. Pancake mix was flour, baking powder, and salt mixed in a jar, not a box, costing 5 times as much. Snacks meant popping corn in a pot, not buying bags of chips. Cookies came from the oven, not packages, and a batch of 3 dozen cost less than one store-bought pack. Even pasta was sometimes homemade, with kids helping roll and cut noodles for Sunday dinner. Soup stocks simmered from bones, sauces were stirred from tomatoes and spices, and salad dressing was oil and vinegar shaken in a jar. Birthday cakes were flour, eggs, and love, not $30 grocery store creations. This from-scratch cooking took time, but saved incredible money. A homemade pizza cost $2 while delivery was $15, homemade bread was 30 cents versus $3, and cookies were 10 cents a dozen versus $4 a package. Families cooking everything from scratch saved $400–500 monthly while eating better, controlling ingredients, and teaching kids that food came from kitchens, not packages. Batch cooking and freezing meals. Sunday wasn't just the Lord's Day, it was cooking day in poor households. Giant pots of chili, spaghetti sauce, and soup simmered while casseroles filled the oven in shifts. This batch cooking meant cooking once, but eating for days or weeks. A huge pot of beans became portions frozen in cottage cheese containers, some plain for side dishes, some with ham for main meals, some mashed for refried beans. When ground beef went on sale, families bought 10 pounds, browning it all at once, then freezing it in meal-sized portions ready for quick weeknight dinners. Casseroles were assembled in disposable aluminum pans, frozen unbaked, ready to pop in the oven on exhausting days. Even breakfast was batched, pancakes and waffles made in huge quantities, frozen, then reheated in toasters. This system meant that "there's nothing to eat" was never true. The freezer held a dozen ready meals. It also prevented the expensive temptation of takeout on busy nights when cooking seemed impossible. The time investment of one long cooking day saved both money and weeknight stress. Families practicing batch cooking reported saving $200–300 monthly on food costs, while actually eating better and more regularly. The freezer became a treasure chest of homemade convenience foods at a fraction of retail cost. Strict use-it-up household rule. Waste was sin in poor households, and the use-it-up rule was gospel. Toothpaste tubes were cut open to scrape the last week's worth from inside. Shampoo bottles got water added for another few washes. Bar soap slivers were pressed together into new bars. Ketchup bottles were rinsed with vinegar for salad dressing. Peanut butter jars got hot water swirled for peanut butter hot chocolate. Pencils were used until they couldn't be gripped, pens until they wouldn't write, even after heating the tip. Every container was scraped, every bottle inverted to drain, every tube squeezed beyond reason. Aluminum foil was washed and reused until it fell apart. Plastic bags were washed, dried on specially designed racks, and reused dozens of times. Even tea bags got a second brewing, coffee filters were rinsed and reused, and paper towels were hung to dry for second uses. This obsessive consumption of every last bit saved surprising amounts. Families estimated $50–75 monthly just from completely using products instead of throwing away the last 10 15%. It also meant shopping less frequently, since products truly lasted their full potential. The habit was so ingrained that many who escaped poverty still can't throw away a bottle with product clinging to the sides, turning down the thermostat and layering. Winter in a poor household meant wearing coats indoors wasn't unusual. Thermostats were set at 60 degrees or lower, with families adapting through layers rather than heat. Everyone owned thermal underwear, wool socks, and multiple sweaters. Blankets were everywhere, on laps while watching TV, over shoulders while doing homework, wrapped around feet at dinner tables. Beds were piled with every blanket in the house, and kids often shared beds for warmth. Space heaters were used to heat only occupied rooms, with doors closed to trap warmth. Plastic-covered windows, towels were stuffed under doors, and heavy curtains were drawn at sunset to insulate. Families gathered in one room during evening hours, body heat warming the space. Baking happened on the coldest days, with oven doors left open afterward to release heat into kitchens. Hot water bottles, heated rice socks, and warmed bricks wrapped in towels provided personal heat sources. Summer meant the opposite: windows open at night, fans instead of air conditioning, and cold dinners to avoid heating the kitchen. These temperature adaptations saved $100, $200 monthly on utilities. The money saved from one winter's lowered heating bill could pay for school clothes or car repairs. Unplugging devices to avoid phantom power. Before anyone called it vampire power, poor families knew that plugged-in devices cost money even when turned off. Everything that wasn't in active use was unplugged completely. The TV, radio, and later VCRs were unplugged after every use. Kitchen appliances lived unplugged unless actively running. Even lamps were unplugged during daytime hours. This wasn't environmental consciousness. It was the knowledge that every penny counted. Families who'd had electricity shut off for non-payment knew exactly how much each device cost to run. They could tell you that the old refrigerator in the basement cost $15 monthly, so it only ran during canning season. The electric water heater was turned off during work and school hours, heated only for evening baths. Some families went so far as to flip breakers for unused rooms, ensuring no power leaked anywhere. This vigilant unplugging saved $20, $40 monthly on electric bills, meaningful money for families counting every dollar. The habit of unplugging became so automatic that many continued it even after achieving financial stability, unable to leave a device plugged in without feeling wasteful. Collecting and rolling loose change. Change wasn't loose in poor households, it was future money being accumulated. Every penny was picked up, every pocket emptied nightly, every couch cushion searched regularly. Massive jars filled with coins sat in bedrooms, growing heavier month by month. Kids learned to roll coins in paper wrappers, making neat rolls worth real dollars. The change jar was sacred, touched only for true emergencies or predetermined goals. Some families had different jars for different purposes: vacation pennies, Christmas quarters, emergency dimes. Finding a quarter on the street was celebrated, and kids were taught that money was money regardless of denomination. When jars were full, the rolling party began with everyone counting and wrapping, amazed at how $50 or $100 had accumulated from nothing. This change often covered emergency expenses: the car repair, the school field trip, the unexpected medical copay. During really tight times, rolled coins bought gas and groceries. Families who religiously saved change reported accumulating $300, $500 annually, money that would have been lost to car floors and laundry machines. The physical weight of saved coins made saving tangible in a way bank accounts never could, repairing before replacing everything. Fix it first was the default response to anything breaking in a poor household. Shoes were resoled multiple times before replacement, often outlasting several repairs. Appliances were opened up, tinkered with, and coaxed back to life with replaced belts, cleaned filters, and creative engineering. Furniture was re-glued, reupholstered with old curtains, and reinforced with brackets and boards. TVs were smacked, antennas adjusted with tinfoil, and picture tubes replaced rather than buying new sets. Even cars were kept running through shade tree mechanics, junkyard parts, and prayers. Every dad had a workshop area filled with salvaged parts, mysterious tools, and the confidence that anything could be fixed with enough effort. Repair manuals from the library were studied, neighbors with expertise were consulted, and YouTube, later, became the university of fixing everything. Items weren't replaced until repair was literally impossible, held together with duct tape, wire, and determination until they absolutely couldn't function. This repair-first mentality saved thousands annually. A washing machine that would be replaced today for $500 was kept running for another 5 years with $50 in parts. The skills learned from constant repair became valuable assets, with many poor kids growing up to become engineers, mechanics, and contractors, planning meals around store sales and flyers. The Wednesday newspaper with grocery store circulars was the most important publication in poor households. Mothers studied those flyers like battle plans, mapping out which store had the best prices on what items. Meals were planned entirely around sales. If chicken was cheap, the family ate chicken 4 ways that week. The loss leaders that stores advertised to draw customers became the foundation of weekly menus. Shopping lists were organized by store, with specific items to buy at each location for maximum savings. Some families hit 3 or 4 stores weekly, buying only sale items at each. Price books were kept, tracking the cost of staples to recognize true bargains versus fake sales. When something hit rock-bottom prices, families bought as much as they could store. The month when pasta was 25 cents a box meant buying 50 boxes. Coupons were clipped, organized, and matched with sales for maximum impact. Rain checks were obtained for sold-out sale items. This strategic shopping could cut grocery bills by 40–50%. A family spending $400 saying no to lifestyle pressure. Perhaps the most powerful money-saving trick was the simplest. Poor families just said no. No to the latest fashions, no to keeping up with the Joneses, no to kids' demands for what everyone else had. They lived below their means not by choice but by necessity, creating a culture where frugality was normal and excess was suspicious. Birthday parties were cake and homemade games, not expensive venues. Christmas meant 1 or 2 thoughtful gifts, not mountains of presents. School clothes shopping meant necessities only, not wardrobes. Vacations were camping trips or visits to relatives, not resorts or theme parks. Kids learned early that "we can't afford it" was a complete answer requiring no further discussion. Adults ignored the pressure to upgrade cars, homes, or lifestyles just because income increased slightly. This ability to resist lifestyle inflation meant that when circumstances improved, savings actually became possible. Families who maintained their poor habits after achieving middle-class income often accumulated surprising wealth. The psychological freedom of not needing external validation through possessions was perhaps the greatest gift poverty gave. The knowledge that happiness and stuff were entirely unrelated concepts. Thanks for joining us on this trip down memory lane. If you enjoyed the video, give it a like and share it with a friend. And don't forget to subscribe.